Oh, turn to Genesis chapter 7. Genesis 7. I want to try and encourage tonight as much as possible. Last week we saw how Noah, being a saved person, still struggled with his old nature, even after observing and being a part of a miracle of God, surviving the flood and building that ark. And though he made bad decisions, we didn't get to go to Genesis 9 and read what happened there with him planting a vineyard and drinking of the wine and getting drunk and all the bad stuff that came out of that was sowed into the world at that time. But even though he made bad decisions, he was still able to rest in the fact that God had saved him and his family from death. He was still able to rest in that. You know, he lived another 300 years. He lived 950 years. And so, even though he had those troubles and all that stuff happened, God used him and tried to encourage you with that. And certain ones have been struggling with the idea lately of, why don't it seem like I'm living in victory? You know, why do I seem like I'm getting beat up all the time and just my joy, I can't muster up my joy like I need to. You know, and so that kind of inspired all this. And in Genesis chapter 7 and verse 11, this is when Noah enters into the ark. And I just want to read the first verse. This is in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. And of course, you know, the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and then they were in that boat on the raging waters for 150 days. That's 5 months they were on that. But though it was destroying the world, it was saving them. You know, as the waters are destroying the world, it's lifting them up above the waters. But everything about the flood for Noah is victory. Does that make sense? And where it says, we just saw the 17th day of the month, that number 17 has to do with victory, or a transforming from being certain death to not death. We'll see that continue when when the ark rests. That's the words that it used. Let's look at Genesis 8 and verse 4. It says in verse 4, that's the next chapter over, and the ark rested in the 7th month, that's 5 months later, on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat. And this date when the ark rested, you know, the word Noah, the name Noah means rest. Isn't that interesting? The name Noah means rest. And you would think by his life and some of the mistakes that he made, which we only know of one mistake that he made, and I'm glad that doesn't define him. I'm glad what defines him is he obeyed God, built the ark, and saved the breath of life to come out on the other side. But this date that the ark rested on the mountains of Reverse the Curse, remember that? The mountains of Ararat is the same date all the way through Scripture where Israel gets victory over something. When Israel crossed the Red Sea, you remember what took place on the 14th day of the month? When Israel crossed the Red Sea, before they got to the Red Sea, what feast did they begin in Israel where they had to put blood over the door? Yeah, that song we sung. When I see the blood, I will pass over you. That was the 14th day of this month. 3 days' journey, they're at the Red Sea. They're facing death. And God saves them when they end up on the other side. Well, now this day when they cross the Red Sea, this is the 17th day of the 7th month. And you go on through Scripture a little bit, and they get manna in the wilderness. And then when they don't need the manna anymore, God takes the manna away on this same time frame, and they enter into the promised land victorious. You know, we always heard in like in Sunday school what the promised land represented. What the promised land represented was a victorious Christian life. And so that happened then. And then Esther, Amber, you might appreciate this. Esther goes in and sees the king and declares to her people a 3-day and 3-night fast. And then 3 days later, from the 14th, the Jews are saved from certain death. Haman was going to kill them all. You see the victory in that there? And one more thing, the Feast of First Fruits was on this same day when Christ rose from the dead. That was pictured all the way back when the ark rested on Ararat. That's why we have those numbers in there. They're so significant, because that's the pictures that God is showing you. You know, when when somebody wants to see my picture of my kids, I pull my cell phone out and I zip through all these pictures. I've took a few, but most of them have been Lauren. She'll take them and send them to me while I'm at work. And I love showing people pictures of my kids. And that's what God's doing. He's showing us pictures of what He loves, you know. He loved us enough, and He sent His only Son to come to earth and to give us victory. And why do so many Christians not feel like they're living in victory? It's a wrong perception of what victory is. We have these expectations of maybe I should be doing this, but I mean, I'm a Christian. I know the Word, and I still struggle with this, and I struggle with that. And I go through this myself at times, and I have to be reminded. Until the day that I am changed. Let's go to that passage first. If you don't want to, you don't have to. But 1 Corinthians chapter 15. This is what Paul said about us. 1 Corinthians chapter 15. I hear pages turning. I'll wait until those pages aren't turning anymore. First Corinthians 15 and verse 52. Look at verse 52. It says, in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump, for the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. We shall be changed. Then and only then will we be changed. We can get better with things. We can put off some things. We can stop drinking. We can stop smoking. We can do some things, can't we? We can stop. Sometimes we can stop eating too many sweets. It's hard, but we can do it. Especially when you're facing certain death. You're like, okay, I can. You might go back to them later, but facing something, you're like, I can quit that. We can get over some things, but we will not fully experience that freedom that we know we have until the twinkling of an eye, and we shall be changed. Paul says in all his teachings that we groan for that day when this sin nature falls off. We groan for that. Paul did as well. And if Paul had the same struggles, but yet he preached Christ and preached that we need to do better. We need to strive to do better. And I hope that I do that. But also all the while, listen, we're not going to be changed until that day. If you know that, then you can live in victory. Do you know what living in victory is? Living in victory is your perception. I said that already. Living in victory would be more like being a good apologizer when you're overcome of self. Being a good forgiver. That's living in victory. Doesn't that make sense? Do you know God will get more glory from somebody apologizing than from somebody that's just perfect all the time? That's why we're told to confess our faults one to another. And we want to hide our faults and act like we don't have any sometimes. But living in victory is being open, walking in the light, Paul called it, and John, in 1 John. Walking in the light, not hiding anything. You tell people, I'm rotten. I don't want to be, but I'm rotten. I'm just like everybody else. I struggle with things. I think things that I wish would never be in there. But Paul said, who shall deliver me from the body of this death? He said, I thank God through Jesus Christ, my Lord.